you join us yet again on another interview episode, and for that, we thank you humbly. And we do hope you enjoy it, because the people that we get to meet through this are incredibly interesting, and we hope you find them interesting too. Now, just remember, you can search for us on social media by looking for Random Urban Memories, or you can hit us up directly on rumboys101@gmail.com. That's rumboys with a Z or a Z, depending on where you are. And yep, hit us up. If there's anything you want to ask us or ask the interviewees that we can pass on, or any suggestions or feedback, just remember you can hit us up on those, or preferably through email, because we literally monitor that 24 hours a day. We don't sleep. We wait for your suggestions or feedback. Now, who do we got today? Who's on the menu? What's going on? We have Michelle Miller, otherwise known as the Farm Babe, who is a livestock farmer based in Iowa in the US. But besides that, or parallel to that, she's a public speaker, a writer, farmer, and social media influencer. But not the way you think. And to be perfectly honest with you, this conversation is most likely going to trigger a few of you out there. We're talking about animal activists and vegans and animal welfare kind of people. But bear with us, see where the conversation takes us, and see what's actually being said. Because the point of these conversations is to go back to the source of this information. All right. So what do we talk about today? We talk about the industry as a whole, the state of it, how it's actually going. We talk about, cost benefit analysis between, standard and organic. We talk about the day-to-day running of a farm, and some of the things that differ between the US and, Europe, Ireland. Some of those points come up because she did come here in 2018 to speak at a conference, and she did do a little bit of a tour to do some on-site visits and, just take in the scenery because it's like super fucking green. And one of the main things and the big things that we talk about are the myths and misinformation about the industry. Those are some key topics that we're going to be talking about and that are very important. Also, how the organic side is also a multi-billion-dollar business, but people tend to forget that, and they don't understand what organic as a product and as a sales piece actually means. Also, we talk about the whole targeted information and social media campaigns where, animal cruelty is kind of shown, and how that relates to the industry and how that's actually perpetrated, who's behind it. And one of the big ones, of course, is GMOs. We're going to get into that into a little bit of detail. Well, no, we're going to explain how it affects the farming industry, but we're not going to go into the full science of it. But absolutely, GMOs will be explained from a perspective of somebody who relies on this kind of thing. The big issue is misunderstanding the facts and the science about all of this, and combating the misinformation, which is a key role in so many other aspects in our lives, such as vaccines and chemtrails and flat earth and whatnot. It's just combating misinformation and checking your own reason and then the source, So also she makes a couple of statements that might not be too popular with some of her colleagues, but I tell you what, the way she was talking on and off camera is she says what she means and she follows the evidence. And I think that's more important than anything else. To make sure you get the most up-to-date information, we're going to link her information in the descriptions of the episodes, and I really do hope you enjoyed. It was very eye-opening, and like I said, bear with it, no matter what angle that you're coming from. So you might learn something. We certainly did. So thank you for joining us yet again. Now, give it up for Michelle.
1, 2, 3. This is Random Urban Memories, brought to you by the Rum Boys. You've seen, heard, or felt it on the streets. Well, we're here to talk about it.
In 3, 2, 1.
From the horse's mouth, so to speak. Michelle, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Michelle Miller, also known as the Farm Babe on social media. So I'm a farmer from out here in Iowa. We run about 2,300 acres worth of cropland, corn, soybeans, oats, and hay, and about 500 head of livestock. So we raise beef cattle and sheep, lambs for meat. So I do local farmers markets and then run my little social media and public speaking about agriculture.
That's fantastic, and you're very welcome on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yay. It's been a long time coming. A few weeks anyway.
I know.
Back and forth.
For sure.
And can you tell us a little bit about your backstory? Yeah, you were from LA, and take us from your previous life into this life.
Yeah, for sure. So I actually grew up in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. So I grew up around agriculture. My best friends growing up were farm kids. So I was in 4-H, and every day after school we would do chores and ride horses. And I always really loved the farm life. So in high school, you take those aptitude tests that tell you what you should major in, what you should go to school for, all that stuff. And every test I took said that I should work in farming, that I should be a veterinarian, work with livestock, something. But instead of that, I moved to Los Angeles because I just wanted to experience living the big city life. So I got a degree in fashion, and I ended up working for Gucci on Rodeo Drive. So I went from this big city lifestyle of, working in Beverly Hills, LA to Chicago. And then over time, I eventually met my boyfriend, the Iowa farmer. So I moved up here to be with him. And then I started my outreach because based on everything I thought I knew about agriculture and a lot of the misinformation that people hear, I've learned just really isn't truthful at all because people aren't really they don't get to talk to farmers, So, living in LA and Chicago, you see these different movies and you watch videos and you hear stories or, GMOs are bad or whatever it is people are hearing. And then I had done a lot of traveling too. So I moved to Florida, and I was actually just bartending and traveling the world, doing the whole globe-trotting bartender thing until my boyfriend was in Florida on vacation. And he hit on his bartender and it worked. So I've had this crazy whirlwind experience of, fashion and bartending and sales career. And now I found what I guess my guidance counselors were telling me to do all along, which is just life coming full circle of saying, I guess they were right. I was supposed to work in farming and agriculture with animals this whole time. So now I feel like I've kind of found my calling in life. So yeah, it's been a wild ride, to say the least.
You picked up a few experiences along the way, at least.
Yeah, for sure. But I love to talk to consumers about it because I know what it feels like to be in their shoes and be so disconnected and, hear misinformation because farmers are 1% of the population, so it's really easy for our voices to be drowned out or for misinformation to swirl when it's like, hey, over here, we're real people, so.
And what would you say, what is your kind of like day-to-day work that you are doing as a farmer, or like how does a typical day of a farmer look like?
Yeah, well, one thing I love about it is that every day is different. And so with us, it depends on the time of year, but we feed a lot of livestock. So in the winter, a lot of it is just a lot of, we feed corn. So a lot of chores morning and evening just to get all the cattle fed, check waters, make sure stuff isn't frozen, broke down. And then in the summer, you're making hay, you're planting, you're spraying, you're harvesting, you're fertilizing. I mean, there's so many different things to do that every day is different. And then you've got to keep up with your equipment and, selling and marketing. And I do farmers markets too. So I'm always like at the butcher and, at markets trying to sell meat directly too. So Doug does most of the work. My boyfriend is Doug. He does a lot of this because now my farm babe thing has really taken off. So I used to do a lot more on the farm, which I still do when I can. But I'm primarily traveling and speaking at conferences, doing stuff like this, and everything like that. So it varies.
And was there a key moment that, like, going about your day-to-day work, finding yourself again, I guess, at which point you said, hold on a minute, I'm catching the ass end of the stick here. Something needs to be done about this. Something needs to be brought to the public about this, because this is simply not true about what I do. Yeah, like you said, there's lots of myths. There's the perceived information and what actually goes on in the background. So was there a defining moment as such? Or it was just one day that somebody asked you a dumb question, or you saw something online and you went, no.
Yeah, no, there's, oh my gosh, yeah, there's so much of it out there. I think for me, the real changing moment was, do you guys have the movie Food Inc. over there in Ireland?
Yeah,
it's on Netflix.
Okay, have you seen it?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay, it doesn't speak the truth about agriculture whatsoever. There is so much misinformation in that film, but it's been such a powerful voice, I guess. Like it pains me to know that movies like this are being shown in schools. First of all, the film was done over a decade ago, so even if there was truth in it, it would be outdated at this point. But I saw that movie living in Chicago. And so I had fallen victim to this myth, about GMOs are terrible and, Monsanto's the devil and farmers are controlled by corporations and factory farming and all this stuff. But when I met my boyfriend and I learned he was growing GMOs, I was like, what? Like, how could this guy so amazing be growing something that's so terrible? And then he started telling me, Monsanto does great things for farmers. And that was really kind of the turning point for me, was to hear straight from a farmer, no, we can do what we want. We have hundreds of seed companies to choose from. We're not controlled by any corporations. And GMOs allow us to use less chemicals and less tillage and no more insecticide spray. And so for me, it was like, holy crap, you mean to tell me this whole time I thought this was terrible? 95% of farmers are growing GMOs in our country. So you have to ask yourself why. And there's a ton of great reasons. But that was the first moment. And then the more I started learning about agriculture and talking to farmers, I learned organic farms use pesticides. Mm-hmm. So I think those were kind of the two big things. Was organic. The whole time I was buying organic, I thought it meant pesticide free, and it doesn't. Mm. And so it's like, then the ball just rolled. It's like, okay, GMOs, pesticides, food labels, what else am I being duped about? Mm-hmm. So then you start to realize you're being duped by other labels, no added hormones or factory farming or all these other myths. And so from there, it's just become a passion of mine to just be a dedicated myth buster, so to speak, in the food and farm community, and really give farmers, scientists, give science a bigger voice in the food space. Because right now we hear a lot of noise that isn't true. But the farmers and scientists that are working really hard every day to come up with amazing solutions to feed everybody are the ones whose voices I try to give a bigger voice to. You know what I mean?
And why do you think that why do you think that the mainstream media is trying to push this agenda against Monsanto?
Well, if you follow the money trail, that's really a big part of it. For example, the movie Food Inc. We'll use that as an example. Mm-hmm. In that film, they make Stonyfield out to sound like such a wonderful company, but they're also the ones that funded it. So if you look at the money trail behind the anti-GMO movement, it's funded by the organic food corporations, the non-GMO project, and all these things. So, improving the environment and using less chemicals, we all want that, right? We're all on the same page here. But the myths, like Monsanto, let's talk about Monsanto. Used to be a big chemical company, but they sold off a majority of their chemical company in the 90s and have been primarily a seed company until they were bought by Bayer. So that was one thing I thought was interesting to learn about, is here this whole time people are saying, oh, Monsanto is controlling farmers, and it's made for a great story to sell and it's gone viral. But if people actually took the time to talk to people that work there and understand what's going on and how they're not a big chemical company, and stuff like that. And I'm not trying to defend them by any means. I have no ties or anything to them other than the fact that we do plant their seeds on our farm. And so I just think it's really interesting to understand, the science as opposed to the myths that have gone viral from special interests looking to gain market share, vegan animal rights groups, trying to raise funds by saying this is what a farm is like when it's really not. And, that kind of stuff, it sells. Fear sells. And so they've been doing it. And I hope that this fierce selling is going to start to backfire. And I think it is.
Yeah.
Slowly it's rolling back. And I think as well, it's very important and admirable that people are out there trying to elevate the voices of the people who work this in the background, because there is no doubt that larger companies do shady shit. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But if you use that as the one factor, be it pharma, be it the car industry, or be it even the chemical or seed companies or whatever, there might be a few instances here and there, and sometimes, like I said, very shady shit. But the idea is to bring people the knowledge and also their own reasoning to take up this information and actually check it for themselves. The data is out there. That's the whole point. You can see if something worked or not. Never mind the fear mongering and never mind what you perceive. The data is out there, and people like yourself, I think it's very important that take the time and effort to actually bring it out there. And people tend to forget that because they might call you a mouthpiece for the industry, but you're not actually. You're kind of like, here's the information and that's it. You know? Yeah,
I'm a farmer. I have no corporate sponsorships or anything like that. I just freelance public speaking, writing, stuff like that. But and it's funny too, because you're right. There is a lot of shady shit to be had in huge corporations, but then they forget. I mean, Whole Foods is a pretty big corporation. I mean, they're bought by Amazon. So, they say, oh, well, I can't trust GMOs, but I can trust organics, but it's the exact same regulatory body that's overseeing every food label. So why, and organic and non-GMO is like, I think it's up to like a $65 billion label now. So it's like, that's big business too. Okay. And I have nothing against, farmers, organic farming, agriculture. There's clearly some benefits to it, but with the non-organic farms, we can do everything they do and then some, because we have all the tools in our toolbox as opposed to just a few selected natural organic ones, So, but if organic was better, we'd all be doing it. If GMOs were bad, 95% of us wouldn't be growing it. It's all common sense that gets lost in the shuffle. Absolutely. Where people need to go to the source and talk to farmers about farming.
And if you would have to explain, so let's say I'm a new farmer. I'm completely like blank page. I don't know anything about farming. Why should I go for genetically modified stuff rather than going after like the organic stuff? What would be your main reasoning for me, for example?
Well, I think it depends on economies of scale too. I think it's important to remember that there's actually only 10 GMO crops commercially available here in the US and Canada. I think in Ireland it's a little different because I don't think you guys are even allowed to cultivate GMOs there, which is a whole nother topic. But, for us, our only options for GMOs are your commodity crops, your corn, soybeans, canola, cotton, alfalfa, stuff like that. So it depends. As a farmer, are you going to have a small hobby farm where you're growing fruits and vegetables? Because you can't even get GMO seeds if you wanted to because they don't exist. Whereas for somebody like us, I mean, we are larger scale, 2,500 acres, commercial commodity crops grown for global export, whereas it's a full-time career. That's all we do for this market. So it depends on economies of scales and market. If you want to have 5 or 10 acres for vegetables for the market, awesome. And if you can make a premium selling organic, go for it. I think probably about 95% of the farmers I've talked to that have switched to organic have done it so that they can make more money. So you can't fault them for that.
And what is the difference in like yield? So let's say, I don't know, like what, or in terms of like profits?
So again, I think it's economies of scale. With a couple acres, when you can manage things by hand, you could probably get something very similar. On large scale commercial grain, like we're doing, we're seeing, so my boyfriend's family also owns a small agribusiness. So they do custom planting, spraying, harvesting. They sell seed. We own a feed mill, semi trucks, basically anything a farmer needs, we can service it. Farmers can hire us to outsource all of this stuff. So we work with farmers every day, big, small, organic, not. And the biggest thing we've seen with organic is, yes, the yields are much lower and they just turn into fields of weeds because they don't have that herbicide tolerant technology, or they can still use pesticides. So they might still use like a different type of, insecticide, herbicide, fungicide, whatever they need, but they're limited. So the yields aren't going to be as good. They're going to use more tillage, generally speaking. And about 75% of the farmers in our area have actually switched away from it because they think, okay, if I switch to organic corn, I can make $10 per bushel. Whereas we're making, $3.50 a bushel or something. It's really bad right now for us. And that's a whole nother topic. Yeah. But if you look at, okay, we're getting 240 bushels per acre at $3.50 as opposed to the organic corn that's maybe getting, I can't even think of a number off the top of my head. I'd have to go back and read my notes because I do know these numbers, just not off the top of my head. But if you're saying maybe, 60 or 80 or whatever times $10, you weigh out the pros and the cons. Organic seeds cheaper, organic inputs are cheaper. They pay money to get certified. So, you have to pass that cost on. So it's all relative. But what I found based on talking to people is that financially it kind of winds up being the same. So, it just depends on if somebody wants to go that route. Inputs are cheaper. But it depends on the crop and the size of the farm.
Gotcha.
You did some speaking in Ireland at the International Association for Plant Biotechnology in 2018, and I read a good article about it in The Independent. What was your impression of the visit here? And just for our Irish listeners now as well to kind of link in, because US farming would differ a lot in terms of regulation and that kind of stuff than most of Europe does. So what's your impressions of the visit here, and what differences did you see right off the bat? Because you did a bit of a tour, you said, as well, to visit people in the industry and farms and on-site visits.
Yeah, it was great. It was my first time to Ireland, and when you picture Ireland, you think of the beautiful green hills and the rolling meadows and the cows on pasture, and you just picture that.
That's how they got us. That's how they got us also.
I saw a postcard.
We are going.
Then we came.
It's an island. Let's go.
Yes, it is, and it was beautiful, and it completely surpassed my expectations. I love Ireland, and I hope to get back again sometime soon. But yeah, when I was there, I met with the Irish Food Board, Board BIA, Origin Green. I met with the global headquarters of Alltech. I spoke to the International Association of Plant Biotechnology, which is scientists from all around the world that specialize in biotech, in said GMOs, plant breeding, all this different stuff. So it was really interesting to speak there. They had me speak to talk about, the benefits of GMOs being cultivated on our farm. So we kind of told the story of how it's helped us. And then I kind of tied that into how we can help farmers around the world. So it was really neat because here in the US, we obviously, we grow them, export, which, by the way, Ireland imports GMOs. So that's interesting because they're not allowed to cultivate, but they can import. Right. So you still have some of our GMOs over there, mostly for livestock feed. But it was neat afterwards because I had a lot of scientists come up and say, we loved hearing what you have to say, but because of political reasons and activists and these myths that we're talking about, and also marketing. So Ireland really likes the fact that they have this perception of green, hilly, grassy, beautiful pasture, which is pure. Awesome. So pure.
That's best butter in the world.
That's how they want to market it. They don't want to have GMOs because GMO sounds like some weird, creepy, unnatural mutation that you shouldn't put in your body. So I get it, but there is a scientist y'all need to look up. He's an Irish plant scientist named Dr. Ewan Mullins. And I heard him speak. He has developed a GMO potato that is ready to go. Farmers could have it. They could plant it in Ireland. But because it's a GMO, the government won't allow potato farmers to grow these GMO potatoes. The problem with this is that there's potato blight in the potato crops in Ireland. And so these farmers are having to spray insecticides 16, 17, 18 times in a growing season because of this issue. Now, the solution exists where Irish potato farmers could grow these potatoes and never have to spray, okay? We could take 17 pesticide sprays down to 0 with the solution that exists today if politics, myths, activists weren't getting involved. It's so sad because crazy. We all have the same goal, but talk to him. He's the guy I learned all this from. He's the scientist, Dr. Ewan Mullins. And that blew my mind. And I had the same thing. A French scientist came up and he said, I loved your talk. I'm a scientist here. We're not allowed to grow GMOs. It's really sad. But it's politics, and it sucks because at the end of the day, we all care. So also in Ireland, we do a lot of grain finishing here, a lot of feedlots and everything like that. And every feed additive or any feed component is given almost like an environmental footprint scale. So the science behind feed to determine GHG emissions is really incredible. So in the US, livestock make up 4% of greenhouse gas emissions. In Ireland, it's closer to 40 or 50%. And that was what I learned meeting with Alltech. So Alltech Global Headquarters, it specializes in all this. I talked to the scientists there as well. So, there's pluses and minuses though, because grass finishing has environmental benefits like carbon sequestration and all these great things for the planet. And it's cheap. It's free if they're out on grass. So you have that, the cost aspect. And you guys are just lucky enough because you have the climate to do it. Here in Iowa, where we get crazy amount of snowstorms, grass finished cattle, what you guys have is beautiful, but it's not feasible here because we have blizzards and stuff and lots of ice and snow. So, we always have to provide them some sort of feed. So there's pros and cons to everything really. So it's not trying to, bash anybody or anything like that, but just to, look at the big picture and understand the pluses and minuses.
And what do you think is the most, because I want to kind of like understand more about the GMO part. So, what do you think, do people not know about GMOs, like the most common things that you are seeing? Like how are people skeptic, like kind of like, when you are meeting skeptics about GMOs and all of this stuff? And what do you think might change the perception of like general public, especially when they are so kind of like influenced by the mainstream media, from the, let's say, I don't know, like this generation, teenagers, and then like even the kids. So everybody tries to always talk about the organic stuff and but then it seems that there is like a lot of stuff that people just don't know, right?
Yeah.
And so what would be your kind of like take on how to bridge this gap?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm curious to see who even came up with the word GMO, because it does sound like really creepy, like actually, what the heck is a GMO?
If that is something you could break down right from the get-go, because it is a genetically modified organism, which I guess scientifically is an accurate description. But if you could break down those categories and then link that back into how that might affect media or people's perception of them, because these sound pretty scary if you don't know what they are, if you have only read about them, that kind of thing, mutagenesis and whatnot, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Mutagenesis is a plant breeding method that is allowed in organic. So it's really funny because
when you hear it like
everything we eat is modified in some way. There's no such thing as natural foods. I think there's like 1 or 2 berries out there that are still natural that haven't been modified. So everything is somehow modified. The difference now, when you have traditional plant breeding, it was a lot less accurate. Whereas nowadays with, say, transgenesis or cisgenic plant breeding, there's RNA interference. There's, CRISPR is on its way, So,
what was that?
CRISPR-9.
What does it mean?
Gene modifying tool where you can actually take out genomes. We did an episode on this.
All right. Oh yeah. Okay. No. I'm like, that cannot be the same. I was like, that cannot be the same thing.
Yeah, the genome editing tool.
I know, CRISPR.
But they're trying to make it sound like some like a food, like a crisp, right? Crisp. So
it's potato chips.
They're doing some progress there, guys.
That's when you leave the potatoes in a little bit too long. No, I'm just kidding. So nowadays they've found a way to just change 1 or 2 genes as opposed to randomly scrambling thousands and hoping for a desired outcome. So it's actually a lot less invasive and it goes through a lot more testing. So yeah, a lot of times I think if you ask somebody what's a GMO, they don't really know, or they might think they know based on these myths. So what I think we can do is continue to do stuff like this and just educate by giving scientists and farmers a bigger voice. But also raise awareness on, the misinformation. Like I said, the organic food corporations, you've got your Whole Foods, Organic Valley, Stonyfield Organic, Applegate Organic, all these huge companies that are spending about $3 billion per year leading with fear and misinformation to sell products. So I think raising awareness on that and following the money trail behind, okay, here is GMO-free USA, whatever. Who is funding them? Who's funding all this organic marketing, fear-mongering? It's the same companies that are set to profit off of it,
Mm-hmm.
So exposing that and continuing to tell people it's just like everything in life. If you want to fix your car, go to your auto mechanic. Don't go to your dentist. If you want to get your teeth looked at, you go to your dentist. And it's the same thing with agriculture.
Yeah, but the dentist made a really shocking video about car mechanics.
Yeah, did you?
Yeah,
Shocking.
and then I shared it. Nobody bothered to check it. And now my whole neighborhood goes to car advice at our dentist. That's how social media bullshit works.
Yes, exactly. And this goes across so many different avenues of our lives, right? And it's sad because scientists are brilliant, wonderful people that work so hard to come up with solutions. And then you just have these myths and it's like, man, you guys, if you just took a second to just understand the science and get it, it's really cool.
But that is such a deep issue within the science community that the scientists are great, but you have a very, very small handful of science communicators.
Right.
That's the issue, because you're looking at incredibly, to the layperson, incredibly boring data, incredibly boring information, but the end results is very important. But like a 100-page report on something, nobody's going to read that. But you need somebody who can stand in front of a camera or a video and break it down. This is the problem. The information is there. It just gets lost. And the science community knows this, that they're terrible communicators and they don't put enough budgets or effort into this,
Exactly. And that's what I'm working to do every day is just to speak out about it. And, I get hired to do a lot of public speaking at different events. And one of the topics that I speak about is delivering communication tips to farmers, because I think sometimes too, it's easy for farmers to feel frustrated with people that, think that food just comes from the grocery store. But that's all they know. They don't know how bad the disconnect is. Now, for me, I went from being the city Whole Foods shopper, anti-GMO activist, wouldn't buy, factory farmed meats because I thought it was terrible. So to go from all the myths that I believed in, I really think I can tap into this market of people because I was one of them, so to really say, hey, I get it. Here are some tools to help you kind of examine the other side and understand what's actually going on, because we're all on the same team. Like, we all want less pesticides. We all want scientific advancements. We all want people living longer, healthy. We all care about health. So just to try to give farmers and scientists better ways to communicate it. And you said, fear is easy and science is hard. So many brilliant scientists, but then you ask them questions about what they do and they instantly go off into their realm of knowledge that nobody knows what they're talking about. And it's the same with farmers. They say, oh, well, ag and, combines and augers. It's like the average person doesn't know what an auger or a combine is. So let's take a step back and go to, kindergarten level of farm knowledge, and people that do go to farms, a lot of times it's those fun, pretty little hobby farms, which are so beautiful and wonderful. But that's not how global agriculture works. We have to depend on international trade. I'd love to be a banana farmer. I can't, so just stuff like that.
Well, that's why exactly. That's why we're picking your brain on these kind of subjects, is for people out there that listen or might watch us who mightn't understand that these myths exist, what type of myths they are, and we're going to get into that now in a second as well. And they mightn't even be aware that the industry is struggling because of this misinformation.
The IARC says that glyphosate is a possible carcinogen. Well, the IARC also said that the sun is, and sunscreen is, and working the night shift, and coffee, and organic pesticide, organic vegetable. I mean, everything, according to the IARC, is some sort of carcinogen. Everything causes cancer, and it's crazy, and it's silly because it's something we all care about. But if you talk to actual oncologists or people that study this sort of thing for a living, it's just, that's not really the case. And they measure hazards, not risks. So if you look at, say, Prop 65 in California, if it's like a 1 in 100,000 chance over 70 years, you might get cancer, they got to put a label on it for Prop 65. Yeah. So you have people going to court, really smooth talking lawyers, and then people saying, the jury being influenced by that because they're not scientists, they're not toxicologists, they're not experts. So it's, again, like you said, really easy to go the fear-based route as opposed to, but what does the scientific evidence actually say? Mm-hmm. You can say, well, the IARC said that. Yeah, but what about the Agricultural Health Study? What about the National Academies of Sciences? What about all these other organizations that say there isn't? And so it's crazy. Even in California, there's Prop 65 warnings on Disneyland, on fishing poles. I'm not kidding. If you go to Disneyland in Anaheim, there's a sign that says chemicals here may be known in the state of California that may cause cancer. It's crazy. Everything has that warning.
Ridiculous.
And when it comes to
that's California.
And when it comes to like testing, so let's say, so we know that, for example, when you want to bring a new drug out, you have to have some sort of a like period of testing. So let's say 5 to 8 years. Then it moves to another phase of testing, and then you are able to move forward with to bringing it to market. Is there something similar for GMOs that companies need to do? How long is it, and what is the procedure there?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Typically, it takes about 12 to 15 years and hundreds of millions of dollars to bring a new GMO to market. And that's another reason why, I mean, some of the big companies, again, are the ones that are doing this because they're the only ones that can afford to do it, to do the research and the funding. So, yeah, I mean, it goes through well over a decade, at least, worth of testing through different university platforms, through science, through peer review, through so many different avenues to get that tested. I actually was at the University of Florida in their lab a few months ago and got to see that. It was really cool. They were actually developing a new herbicide. Mm-hmm. So, again, it goes back to science. Why would scientists, and actually one of my good friends is actually a pharmaceutical scientist for a living. It's really cool to talk to him. He's like, I got my Super Bowl ring of being a pharmaceutical scientist. He's like, it's like the Super Bowl ring. My drug was finally approved after me developing it for 20 years. And it's so exciting. You just want to go out and celebrate it. And this is one of my good friends, but people fear, you have to have trust. If they don't know you, they don't trust you. And if there's fear, it sells. And so you've got people, it's like, whoa, but have you ever actually met a scientist that does this shit? Because they're real people, but nobody knows them. So, but being in the lab with the scientists and seeing what's going on, why would a scientist spend decades of their lives to developing something that would make our lives more miserable?
And that they would also consume? And
that's not really good for business, So if you come up with this, hey, we got this new GMO corn seed, and because of it, you're going to have to spray a lot more chemicals, and you're going to have to use a lot more tillage. Where do I sign? Said no farmer ever. So it's the same thing with, vaccines and GMOs and all this stuff. It's like, why would we be doing it if it was going to make our lives terrible?
Well, the thing is, we consume these products, including the people that make them. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, yeah. As farmers, we eat what we grow. Like, why would I produce something that I wouldn't eat myself? That's just crazy. Mm-hmm.
So no, you got a very good point there. And
I need some. They say that GMO labels are starting to come up, and you're starting to see it now in the U.S. It says partially produced with genetic engineering, and I'm like, yes, like I actually kind of like these labels. A lot of people were fighting it because they're like, well, it's going to increase the cost of food. It's going to what else were they worried about? It's not necessary because it's another meaningless label. But we're already labeling the consumer to death. What's one more? And it's one that actually means something. Like if it's produced with GMOs, like I'm all about it. You know.
Usually, like the price would be lower, right? Normally, compared to organic. At least that's how it is, like in Europe.
Yeah, generally speaking. Yeah.
So, like for the end customer, that would kind of like play a huge role, right? Because like everybody wants to save money, unless you have stacks of money that you can just spend. Like if you're Pablo Escobar, you probably don't care. But in general, like the general public would be looking at the price in at that sense, right? So would they be caring that much about the label?
Yeah, I think I think it is important to keep food affordable, and again, that's why high yields are important too, and why we do turn corn and soy into so many products. I mean, I hate the whole junk food market, and that's a whole nother topic, but we definitely need to be eating healthier as a society, and corn and soy and all that stuff definitely isn't helping that cause, and that's coming from a corn and soy grower. I get it, there's also 4,000 uses for corn, so it's a lot more than just junk food, but that's another story too. But anyway, I got off on a tangent. You had asked about the cost of food.
Yes. And ignore the labels.
It depends on who it is and what the perceived health halo is. And if you like I said, about 95% of the farmers I've met that have switched to organic have done it because they know they can charge more for it. But I've also heard a lot of them say, I hope this trend ends soon because my fields look like crap. And again, it's important to go to the source of large scale. But, if you notice, there's not exactly a lot of food companies that are jumping on board with my mission here because they want consumers to spend more money, obviously. So they're all about organic and non-GMO because if they can charge a premium and they spend this money deceiving people, but it makes them more money, they're going to do it. So
there's parent companies like Nestle. They own half of everything. And they have organic subsections that you would think, you're like, I thought this was your local market food. It's owned by the top dogs of industry.
Yeah, for sure.
It's crazy.
There's a lot of that too. Yeah. A lot of corporate consolidation in pretty much every industry. I say that too, when people say, farmers and Monsanto or whatever. And it's like, well, we have hundreds of seed companies to choose from. And sure, Monsanto or Bayer, now Bayer. Bayer's, one of the biggest. So is Dow DuPont, Syngenta. You've got these big players. But it's the same with every industry. I mean, what do you have for your cell phone? It's probably an iPhone or it's an Android.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's probably owned by Samsung or, where do you want to go for your convenience store? Walmart and Target. I don't know what you guys have over there, but every industry is kind of like that. It's just capitalism, and it's there's really no.
No, you're absolutely right too. Like it's always going to be dominated, especially now in the last 50 years by specific brands within subcategories. But you said something earlier that kind of got me thinking there about the economies of scale and eating healthier to combine those two. Now, in all truth, technically, theoretically, if possible, the best thing you should have or could have is to have your patch out the back and get as much from that as you can. That is the cleanest and best way of doing it. Add 7 billion people to that in the next, already we're in and around that.
More than that.
Yeah. Not everybody can have a veg patch out the back. You know what I mean? Like this is something that they forget. Yes. If your market and farmer around the corner can sell you these, I'll just put it in inverted commas, purely organic, as in really grown with heart and untouched. Sure. Which is basically nearly impossible to protect the crops. But then that's all well and good. But you cannot feed millions of people that you might be in a sector providing with such large scale and not expect a blight to come across and cross-contamination. That's something that I actually wanted to put across to the listeners out there. They keep forgetting that if you can do it, go ahead. But we're talking scale here, and these people need to be fed.
Yes. You know? New York City. I mean, all you have to do is Google an image of New York City in the wintertime and be like, yeah. Grow your own food, they said. It would be fun, they said.
So can we roll now onto some of the more shocking myths? Because we talked about GMOs, we talked about the perception, the media, economies of scale, and farming, the industry as a whole. But let's get down to some of these myths, because a lot of this fear spreading, independent of the companies, what is done by a lot of people that I see is just basically horrific farm practices. Now, they generally tend to stem from A, rogue farmers, B, countries that don't have the same regulation, or it's very difficult to determine the origin of the video. We're talking, horrible slaughter practices and absolute cruelty to animals, these kind of things. And there's no denying that it's out there. And that's why we're having this conversation to clear up this issue and the information behind it. So can we start, generally speaking, with battery and factory farming? What is it? How prevalent is it? And what can you tell us about it? These images, for the listeners out there who don't know, huge, gigantic halls with tens or hundreds of thousands of chickens not being able to move, that kind of thing. Pigs squashed up, animals being squashed up. You might have seen one of those. And this is what we're here to discuss. This is another one of my favorite parts of egg to debunk, is to demystify. Is yes, you're right. It's out there. How prevalent is it? It's crazy. This has probably been one of the most eye-opening experiences for me, because I always thought that too until I actually started going inside. So probably my favorite thing in the world to do is to tour these large-scale CAFO, as we call them. The proper term is CAFO, which is Confined Animal Feeding Operation or Organization. But factory farm is a slang term. It's a slang term that has been made popular by animal rights, vegan activist groups, or people really want us to stop eating meat. They spend a lot of money in campaigns to try to get people to donate, to raise money to help the animals and go vegan. That's a very popular topic. But they will take... PETA is a large proponent of that.
What is the large proponent
PETA.
of that? Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. So here in the U.S., we have an organization that is known as PETA in a business suit, which is the Humane Society of the United States, HSUS. So HSUS lobbied over $140 some odd million last year against animal agriculture alone. So these lobbyists are going and they're trying to get farmers to change their practices. And to do that, they're making this information that isn't necessarily true for animals. So again, you look at something like a cage for a chicken. And by the way, there's all meat chickens, broilers, are all raised cage free. The only time you have caged ones are for egg layers.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's going to give the egg a lot. When that chicken lays that egg, it rolls down onto a conveyor system. It's away from its manure. It's away from any diseases, away from any bedding, or basically the egg is clean because it's not in its own shit, Yeah. So there's reasons. So again, I don't think any farmer is going to spend tens of millions of dollars to build these expensive infrastructure and cages if it wasn't for the best interest of the birds. Profit's a thing, of course, let's not deny that. But what the videos will do is they will take like the worst of the worst and amplify that. So, great example of this. I went to a pig farm. I was on a podcast, actually. Is it okay to talk about another podcast?
Absolutely,
on your podcast?
Yeah. If it helps the community to hear what else is out there.
Yeah, so if anybody wants to look this up, I was on a podcast with a guy by the name of David Smalley on Dogma Debate, and he did a factory farm episode, and he had PETA on his show. So what Dogma Debate does is they take people from extremist views, so they have PETA on, and people are really upset that he's got PETA on because they don't want to give them any platform because they don't speak the truth. He said, well, you need to talk to a farmer. You need to talk to Farm Babe. And so he came out here. We toured a bunch of factory farms, one pig farm that raises 800,000 pigs. I took him to a dairy farm with 3,000 cows. The industry is as transparent as you want it to be if there's trust. Because what happens, I had to really do my due diligence with this guy to get him on a farm because we're in this pen. There's 7,000 pigs in this one pen, right? Running like crazy. One little piglet got his legs stuck. And I said, and the pig's squealing like crazy. And I said, you see that? You see that? There's 7,000 pigs in this pen. If you were an animal rights activist, you would film that and say, this is where your bacon comes from. So they take that one extreme instance, or they'll take a picture or a video and say, look at this, they can't even move, while completely ignoring the fact that if you turn the camera just a little bit this way, you'd see that they've got like acres. I've done it. I can do it with my own livestock. You can also do it with weather conditions, right? Like we just finished hauling manure today. We were scraping pens today. I said, God, our pens look like crap right now. But I took a beautiful picture of them in the summertime where the sun's shining and they're clean and the hay is there and it's wonderful. Well, guess what? Right now they look like crap because all the snow just melted. The pens are muddy. Yeah. We can't haul it because the ground's not frozen or it's raining. So we're not going to haul it today because it's going to rain tomorrow. So it doesn't, there's a reason why we do everything. So, other videos out there can be taken out of context. They can be from other countries. They can be outdated. You have no idea. I have seen the same video be used for multiple scenarios, for multiple companies, for multiple things. And it's the exact same video. So it's like, you're not saying something here. Then I've heard from very credible sources within our industry that sometimes animal activists are only paid. Actually, this is a fact because this was on the Mercy for Animals website. This is right on the website under the job description. They are paid up to $800 per week to find abuse. But if they don't find abuse, they want to find it. So they'll pay somebody like one of these, like maybe an immigrant worker, be like, hey, I'll give you $100 if you go hit that cow. And then they film it. Well, now all of a sudden they have abuse. They can create a catchy video. They can raise funds, raise donations. Because that's their agenda, because they want to make it look cruel. And it drives everybody crazy. Those videos are heartbreaking. But I tell you what, they're a lot more heartbreaking to the farmers because we care for these animals every day. Don't try to make us all look bad. Don't paint us all with the same brush. And those animals are our profits. Yeah. Sick animals, I mean, the better we treat them, the better they treat us. So this is all, again, common sense of, why would we want chickens that can't move or break their legs? Why would we want animals that are sick? Like we can't sell them.
You would just have much bigger cost of handling them in general.
Yes. Well, exactly.
Because I had a summer job at a cow farm, actually in Mayo.
Yeah.
So I know, like you don't see any sort of a kind of like misbehavior with the animals. Like they are usually like kind of like free to do whatever they want. But it's and then you see all of these videos, like people show up and like there was a girl jumping into like I think it was like she was like a vegan activist jumping into a factory. Then I think there was like pigs or cows, and then she was taking videos with them and crying that it's like, okay, I don't want you to die and all of this, but it's like, people always kind of like see all of these videos, and it's usually, let's say the next generation might have a very skewed kind of like view on the whole picture. They have never seen, they're eating chicken, they're eating beef, and you might know people who have never seen a live cow or a live chicken,
right.
So, and this is a big problem, like at the moment.
Yeah. I actually have a couple vegan friends, and they're cool people, and we're nice to each other, respectful to the fact it's like, I don't care if you don't want to eat meat. Do you? I don't really care what you eat. Just don't perpetuate misinformation to push a certain diet agenda. And it's like, if you really care about animals and you don't want to eat them, some of my best friends in the whole wide world are vegetarians. If that's how you feel, go for it. But just don't feel the need to be so extreme with it, And if an animal is hurt, by all means, punish the mofo that did that. You know what I mean? Like fire that dude.
Absolutely.
If you really care about animals, why do you continue to sit there and let the cameras roll? Because you know what? If somebody was hitting my cow, I wouldn't be filming it. I'd be throwing that camera to the ground to go beat that guy's ass that just hit my cow. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's common sense. And, the industry's not perfect. we've come a long way. It probably never will be perfect, of course, but that's every industry in the world. Just because there's one bad cop or one bad teacher doesn't mean they're all bad. But it's business. It's your reputation. It's your profitability. It's your life. It's your livelihood.
Well, just like anything else, even in the crudest business terms, is a happy animal is a productive animal.
Oh, absolutely. They gain better. They're more delicious.
That's actually a fact. Stressed cows give bad meat, for example, because of the stress hormones.
You have less meat, so you want to have those kilos, to be on the cow. So
that reminds me of a case which might have been a bit more than a decade ago, but these activists, I think, freed a whole bunch of animals out of a lab, whatever it was, and they destroyed the lab, but that lab contained research to cure a disease. I think it was done. That's what it was. It actually had the cure. It just hadn't gone to market yet, but they were already in phase 3, I think, or phase 2. But they lost all research and nobody had any interest.
Oh yeah,
they literally had a cure for something that would have saved whatever. And this that includes crop burning and stuff like that in Europe. Apparently they had incredible amounts of crop ready to go, testing. They burnt it, and they burnt basically the evidence out of the labs and stuff like that. And it's insane. It's just there is reasons.
It is so insane.
Yeah,
it's so true. It's just so backwards for humanity. There's on that note.
Yeah.
If you guys get a chance to look up this gal named Cindy Buckmaster, she's a professor of, she does animal testing, for a living, and she's also a professor for it. So I've heard her speak at conferences before, and, Cindy Buckmaster, look her up. But she's like the guru, like my go-to for questions related to animal testing, because that's exactly right. I mean, they're scientific breakthroughs through animal testing, and the way that these animals are so well treated, and you cannot have a single germ, I mean, it's so regulated to death in a very brilliant way that I can't speak to nearly as well as the scientist can, but she's a great person.
To go through just a couple of these and just a couple of words on them. The famous ones are gestation crates for pigs. That's another misconception.
Yeah. So there's 2 different types. There's the farrowing crate and the gestation crate. Yeah. So the farrowing crate is after the pig has had piglets, and that protects them so that the pig doesn't roll over and crush the piglets.
Yeah.
Now, these crates are also developed because you hear these terms like boss hog. Pigs can be very aggressive. They can bite one another. They can eat their young. They can kill each other. They can be very aggressive. So they were developed, again, to protect the pigs. Now, there's a difference between the gestation crate and the farrowing crate. Now, the gestation crate is when they're there and they're pregnant. Now, I do have a little bit of a problem with these.
Okay.
I understand why they're there. However, this is another cool thing about animal agriculture is we're always looking to improve. And now they're starting to say, you know what, we can do group housing. And they're doing the same thing with dairy calves. So I'm seeing this trend where they are starting to not do that, which makes me happy because any way you slice it, you can say that it's for the health of the mother and to protect them or whatever. And I'm sure there's some truth to that. But if you've got them in small groups, 3, 4, 5, you can make it happen. And a lot of companies are starting to switch over to that now, partly due to consumer pressure, activist pressure. But I think some of this is justified. I will give them that. Mm-hmm. But dairy calves, sows, if you can do it, new research has come out. Even Smithfield Foods is doing this. Smithfield Foods, the world's largest pork producer, they're starting to switch over, get rid of gestation crates and do into group housing. So I think that's good. And it makes you feel better. I mean, that's the hard part about this stuff too, is like the feelings are there. It's like, nothing makes me happier than seeing, the cattle out on pasture and running around and happy and all that stuff is wonderful. But, we got a lot of people to feed, and we got to keep our carbon footprint down. We got to be able to capture our resources. We've got to be able to have an ROI and build business. And and you've got to protect them from disease. You've got to come up with vaccinations. It's like, there's a reason, animals are raised indoors here because it's 100 degrees in the summer and negative 20 in the winters, and diseases, predators. You've got so many things to worry about that it's it's important to raise animals indoors sometimes to help them and protect them. But yeah, so gestation crates, yeah, it's questionable. I might get a little bit of flack for saying I don't think they're necessary, but I'm happy. Let's just say I'm happy to see the research is progressing to say we can always do things better. How about that? I like that.
Good point.
Science. We love science here.
Science. Yes.
Science.
And tell me about, speaking about calves and piglets and whatnot, this whole thing about keeping animals forcibly or artificially pregnant forever so that they constantly produce milk and not right after that. And there's another good one. Oh, yeah.
I'm glad this videotape.
Removing newborns right after birth.
Oh, I'm so glad this is videotaped.
You can combine those.
Yeah, I'm so glad to see this videotape so everybody could see my eye roll.
I wasn't even looking at the screen,
my eyes and I
could
them back
I could see
they rolled so far back in my head. More common misconceptions, and I mean, a cow gestation is 9 months, and then there's a dry period, and it's true. You have to get milk from a lactating cow. That's how this works. So they do have to have a calf. Mm-hmm. But cows are also in heat, and they ride each other. And there's different signs, symptoms, and signs you can see that say, they want to be bred. And artificial insemination is a really popular way to do that in dairy right now, because bulls can be very aggressive, very harmful, and it's just an easier, better way to track it. You can track the genetics, so is this cow going to have a mellow temperament, and do you want this cow to produce the most milk? Again, you want to produce more with less resources. And we can do that now with technologies like this. So again, always a method to the madness. And with calves, once that calf is born, mom licks it off, gets enough colostrum to make sure that calf is happy and healthy. But then when you have that separation, you can do a really great job of taking care of their health and well-being, making sure everything's good. So there's a number of reasons behind it, but yeah, I mean, we do have to get milk from cows.
and how does it work?
How it's done, but
how does it work throughout the year? So a cow has one calf, and then there's how long is the period between for a cow being pregnant, then not being pregnant, and then being able to be pregnant? I think that was
the idea, that they're forever during while they can conceive, that they're just permanently pregnant forever.
Yeah.
That's I think the idea behind it.
They have a calf a year typically.
Oh,
it's
right,
a 9 gestation. So yeah. So
okay.
And then there's that dry period. They do get a little break where they're not milked, and then they will be rebred. And yeah, I mean that's kind of the part of it.
Gotcha.
That's what it's all about. And so.
And a very quick one. Fistulated cows. So basically, it's a farmer with a cow with a hole in the side of it, and a farmer is just there reaching around, stirring or testing the contents of the stomach. But if you don't know what it is, you're just go, what the is that? Like what?
Oh,
but it's actually very common and normal and quite beneficial.
And it's not harmful for the cow, no? Like they don't feel it as a pain. No.
Can you give us a word about that?
Yeah, what you just kind of hit the nail on the head there. Yeah, it doesn't hurt them. It looks super weird. And I've actually, to be honest, you say it's common, which it is in like research and maybe veterinary medicine and stuff like that. I've actually never seen one in real life.
Okay.
So I guess it's really not all that common, because I think it is done a lot more for research purposes than it is
maybe
for
it's
actual...
a common way to do it, to get at whatever it is that they need to get at.
Because I think that what they want to figure out is like what is being, because there's like a lot of like acids and like probiotics like being like are in stomach, and I think that the research is like to try to figure out where are those and how can they use them.
Yeah. Just to understand how the rumen is functioning, but yeah, they do. It's like, it's super weird. You can like cut a hole in a cow and it doesn't hurt them. It's really bizarre. Yeah. And it's the same with, like sometimes, we raise beef cattle on our farm, and I really, to be honest, I don't know a ton about dairy. I think that's probably the one, some of these questions you're asking, I would definitely refer you to like a dairy scientist or I have a lot of friends in dairy science and that are dairy farmers, because I think dairy is a lot more intricate than what we do here. We raise beef cattle. It's a totally different ball game, I think. But I mean, you can, if a cow gets bloated, they can sometimes die from that. So you want to be able to get them to burp, or you can even poke a hole in the side and like let the gas out. It's super weird, but you can do it if you need to.
That's incredible. Wow.
Always work with your veterinarians, okay? Don't try this at home. I'm a very big fan of veterinarians.
Hey,
and
Jim, give me the knife.
But that's the other thing too is nowadays with the regulations in the U.S., the FDA has really cracked down with antibiotic usage as well. So nowadays, a vast majority of antibiotics you can only get with a vet prescription. So it used to be, medicated feed. You had antibiotics in the feed. You were doing preventative medicine. But nowadays, the vaccine innovation has taken over for medication. And now there's a lot more preventative care through biosecurity, through, like I said, raising animals indoors. The technology is incredible. You can literally get a text message if the barn temperature changes. You can get a text message if your cow is about to give birth. They have Fitbits that track 150 data points on a cow. You know how many steps that cow took. You know how much food it ate. It's incredible, the technology. Wow. But along with this technology is, again, just trying to make things better, more efficient, produce more with less resources, with less medication, with less overhead costs. Antibiotics and all that stuff are very expensive. So we'd like to use as little of them as possible. And it's also the law nowadays is you cannot get near the kind of medication over the counter that you used to be able to. I was trying to save one of my lambs. They said, well, we haven't been to your farm in the last 6 months. We can't give you a prescription. I was like, come on, like my lamb might die. And they're like, I'm sorry. I'm not going to lose my veterinary license over writing you a prescription. It's FDA regulations and I'm not going to put my ass on the line for it. So it's like, you get it. So then I just called my other vet and I finally got a hold of him and he wrote it for me because he had actually been on our farm in the last 6 months. So, but yeah, there's a lot of regulations out there too. So it's good. It's just science. It's just constantly learning new things and
so there need to be like regular checks from like vets on a farm. Like how regular are they?
So again, it's within 6 months that they had to have been on your farm.
Every 6 months.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then it just depends on what's going on. We had, for example, a couple of steers that had like a cough. And so you just want to worry about that and stuff like that. You want to worry about with close proximity in pens, if one passes it on to the other, that can be pretty catastrophic. So you want to have the vet out. Even if you call the vet and try to explain it over the phone, he's probably going to want to come out and take a look and just make sure what we're prescribing is correct and that it doesn't spread. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, yeah.
Doctor, I'm sick. Yeah, right. Get in here.
Pretty much.
And what is we talked a little bit about changing trends, changing perceptions, veganism, or also, I think it is actually getting a foothold big time, is minimal meat consumption. Not necessarily cutting it out completely, but rather than eating meat 5 days a week, cut it down to say 2 days or whatever, and eat some fish on whenever, that kind of thing, to a more balanced diet. These are taking more of a foothold, I think. Do you see an impact? And also, in case this comes in, for example, having to do alternative crops or livestock or reduced amounts, are you future-proofed for that? With these trends for changing trends, that seems like, for example, minimal meat. If that keeps developing, you're going to have a lot less meat consumption. Does that mean more crop production, kind of thing?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know. I can kind of see, the population growing. I can kind of see a lot of hardcore meat eaters say, myself included, you can take the meat out of my cold, dead hands. I say there's two things in this world I could never be: a surgeon and a vegetarian. Okay. That's just me. But I don't know, like it could, but I think there's always going to be people that are having that desire. There's a lot of benefits to eating meat. But, even myself, even though I raise red meat for a living, it's like, I try to not eat it every day based on the fact that it's got a lot of calories, and I try to eat healthy. So, everybody knows that chicken and fish is leaner for you than red meat. I think that's just calorically, factually speaking, that's just the facts. But you get a ton of vitamins and minerals and all sorts of great things from beef, and it's good for your brain, and, but just moderation. So I don't really think what gets me is when people say livestock are destroying the planet, but if you look at, say, the actual EPA statistics, here in the US, it's 9%, 4% of that coming from livestock, 2% from cattle. So, and those are the facts straight from the EPA. Yeah. So, look at the facts. Like, should we try to help the environment? Absolutely. But there's ways we can do that are a lot more impactful than just cutting out a steak. You know what I mean?
Well,
and we get hundreds and thousands of byproducts from cattle too. So if you look at, you think of burgers and leather, but you don't think about, there's 185 uses for a pig. From, what was it? There's like porcelain. There's, different types of renewable energy. Crushed bone is used for like a concrete, like cushioning, textiles, adhesives,
gelatin.
Fibers,
but people can't even get like a pig heart, as far as I know.
Pig hearts save lives. Pharmaceuticals, that's a big one. Plastics, adhesives. So it's like, how much worse off would we be if we were developing all these products from raw materials as opposed to just recycling everything but the moo that we get from a cow?
But I think
kind of fascinating.
The impression, and again, we're talking about impressions or perceptions, is that that basically cattle farming or livestock farming in general, and we're talking about methane emissions and all that kind of stuff, is possibly the worst thing ever, apart from chemical pollution or factory pollution or something like that. That seems to be really the big, and like you said, it's only 2% from cattle themselves on a whole in the US. Yeah. I can't give you the statistics here because like you said, the life cycle of the carbon here is just a little bit different as well because of where we're placed in more greener pastures kind of thing. But where do you think that even comes from? Yes, there's a lot of cows farting out there.
Yeah, but before, but
on a global scale.
But even before, like you used to have before America, like when they still had like the Native Americans, there was like 1 billion of bisons or something like that. Like that they then eventually like they started to decrease them because they were hunting them as more and more people came in. But I think it was like 1 billion of like bisons in North America. So doesn't seem that there was a big problem with this, right? Like what will be next? Like they will tell people to stop fighting because like then they'll be like Shane, like your like carbon print, like it's slow down today, right?
My dad is solely responsible for climate change. Let's just put it that way. Oh my gosh.
Wait. Yeah.
Sorry. There was a serious question there somewhere.
The question was, I think, where is this information coming from? And again, it goes back to a lot of activists. And, I think the biggest problem that we have in the agriculture community is that we don't have any celebrities, really. The celebrities that are out there are preaching, I wrote this article called, Hey, Natalie Portman, here's why your term factory farm is so offensive. Yeah. And you have celebrities like Natalie Portman and Leonardo DiCaprio who produced Cowspiracy. And so you have these big name actors and Hollywood celebrity with this insane following and credibility behind them that get these messages spread. And so they create these messages. They get in with good amounts of funding, with a good amount of agenda, and it just goes viral. And there's the expression that says a myth is around the world, has traveled around the world before the truth has put its shoes on. Is the old saying. And so it's true. And I think the biggest thing that I preach to our industry is like, can we just get a Kardashian on a farm already? You know what I mean? Because like Kim Kardashian can send out one tweet and reach like hundreds of millions of people. And agriculture, we tend to play it so safe. And we're such a nice, conservative, wonderful group of good, hardworking, salt of the earth people, which is so true. I mean, everybody loves farmers, right? It's great people, hardworking, awesome people. But
you don't want to kick the hornet's nest.
It's like, but the industry keeps taking the same approach of, well, we're going to show transparency. So we're going to have like this family farm, jangly guitars. And my grandpa was a farmer. My dad was a farmer. My great grandpa. And, it's like, okay, we've heard this story, but it doesn't sell. Like it's beautiful. It's wonderful. But I think we kind of need to fight fire with fire a little bit and not be afraid to put some people in their place and get a damn celebrity on a farm to be like, here's what it's like, y'all, and just have some celebrities with the balls and have our industry with the money to put it behind serious movies, Hollywood, big influence to say, this is what we need to do. When was the last time you saw a farmer and this is US, so I don't know what your programming is, but you've got the Today Show, Good Morning America, the Rachel Ray Show, you have these people going on there that are experts, but they're a nutritionist from New York City. And they're saying, well, you need to buy this because, chickens pump full of hormones. You have to buy organic. Well, there's no such thing as added hormones in chicken. Yeah. So there's all these misleading labels. And then you have the perpetuation of it from people that are hired to talk about it that don't have any experience in it. Yeah. They might know everything when it comes to nutrition. They might be a wonderful doctor, but they're not farmers.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
We all just kind of need to work together and just learn from each other.
I think in Ireland it's not too bad in this sense, because even like when it comes to the to bigger programs, I don't know exactly what they're called, but like when you have like the debates and where even the audience is speaking, so like a lot of times like the audience is made out of farmers.
Well, that's because the agricultural minister lives beside a good chunk of people that know him. The country is so small that it's like, oh, there's Joe. Or whatever. So it's totally different farming atmosphere here. I think it's more
because I know like they were discussing the trend of veganism quite a lot, especially like last year. And I know that in some of the programs, like it's basically like a follow up after news where they do like 1 hour special and they start to talk about the biggest topics. So, and I know that like in these cases, like they literally had like vegans like sitting next to like beef farmers, and like talking about this stuff. But then again, like it depends on like who they are going to put. Like if they are going to put like an old grumpy guy to be the farmer, it's probably not going to resonate the same as like when they put like a, I don't know, good looking young girl or like a hipster guy on the thing where like the teenagers and like the younger generation will kind of like listen better to them,
Absolutely. Yeah. I did a video once in our fields. I sat in my GMO cornfield and I did a video about how much we spray, because people say, oh, GMOs are just drenched in chemicals. And so I sat there in the field and I was like, here I am, here's my cat. We spray 22 ounces per acre, which is like not that much. And it's on an area of land the size of a football field. And we spray 2 days a year. So people freak out because they're like, oh, you're just using all these chemicals. And it's like, we're using less chemicals and safer chemicals. So I talked about that in a video. Yeah. But I definitely made sure to wear a low cut top when I did it. And it had 500,000 views. Wow.
Why do you think my shirt's
But let's be true. Let's be for real. I mean, like, you're going to talk to a younger millennial, or you're going to talk to Joe Farmer, who's, 80 years old and wonderful. We love Joe the Farmer, but it just doesn't sell like a celebrity or, all that stuff. It makes a difference.
Well,
for sure.
As we wind our path through these fields and these crates and halls and farmers markets and whatnot, we're going to come slightly towards the end. But the one thing I wanted to ask you about is lab-grown meat.
Mm-hmm.
that's probably going to come online maybe in 10 years. They're making incredible progress with it.
Maybe.
Would you have to, what would happen? I don't know. What do you just as an opinion, I don't know, would you?
Yeah,
what do you think of it?
It's really interesting. And it's even more interesting that some of the world's largest meat producers are investors in it. So you've got, your Cargill and Tyson that are wanting to make money off this. So people need to pay attention. And, lab grown meat, it still comes from the cells of, I believe it's the cells of the stomach, if I remember correctly.
I think they're the easiest to replicate under certain conditions,
Yeah, so it's, but it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I don't know if anything will ever compare to the real thing, but we'll see. I mean, I'm all for it. If there's a way down the road we can do things better. I mean, I'm just a fan of science.
That's fair.
I mean, I tried soya meat. Like there's a thing like like these kind of like fake meat. It's not the same, right?
I tried it too. I tried it too, and I didn't like it. I know, and it's like I wanted to like it because I'd heard a lot of good things about it. But oh god, I posted it on my social media with a picture of me holding it with a frowny face because I was like, this just is really bad.
The strange thing to me is like, and again, like I understand people why people do it, but like if you don't want to eat meat, why are you trying to make a fake meat?
Yeah,
and eat it then. It's like. So it sounds like you miss it, right? To me,
they say like 97% of vegans go back to eating meat.
Wow.
Well, it's interesting.
Yeah, I can see after what you just said, David. I think there's finally we get people just ringing in with hate.
That's what we want.
No, don't hate us. I mean, as of right now, I mean we do okay with our beef business and everything, and I don't really see it impacting us much at this time. Could things change? Sure, but then you have to think about all the byproducts we get from it. Where are we going to source our leather? Where are we going to source all these other products that we talked about? And but I mean, there's room for scientific advancements. I'm very much a room for this, room for that. People get choices, and that's great.
It's all a matter of balance.
I might get some pissed off people at me for saying that, but but hey,
that's the game.
I love science.
That's the game you play. So
exactly, just my opinion.
To bring it all up to a meandering end, you've been a fantastic guest. It was really a pleasure talking to you. We learned a lot. Hopefully the listeners and viewers out there did as well. Can you just some closing words, some bit of words of wisdom, and afterwards let people know how they can reach you, your sites, your pages, anything else you got out there going on?
Sure. I would say don't believe everything you read on the internet. I would say go to the source. Talk to the real experts, track down, if you can go to your local plant breeding department at your local university and you can connect with these scientists. They're wonderful people. Talk to real large-scale farmers about large-scale farming. We're real. You can find us on social media. We are willing to open our doors and be transparent, and build that trust is so important. But people just have to keep an open mind and be willing to learn. And so that's my wish. It's just talk to us. We're real people. So that's the whole reason why I started my page, which is The Farm Babe. thefarmbabe.com is my website. So you can search Farm Babe on Facebook. My handle is @thefarmbabe on Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, YouTube, @thefarmbabe. And then I'm a weekly columnist at agdaily.com. So check out Ag Daily. I write an article a week. And my website, if you'd like to book me to speak or just check out my articles I've written or learn more about me, thefarmbabe.com. So, yeah.
Perfect.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you humbly.
Thank you very much.
Kindly.
Thanks a lot.
And maybe we can do a follow-up interview of some sorts down the line.
If you're ever in the U.S., you can come tour our farm.
For sure.
Well, same for you. If you want, we don't have a farm, but we can defo meet. Like if you are in Galway area.
Yeah, well, it's too bad I was just in Galway and I missed you in August, but I did get to tour a lot of farms and cross some items off my bucket list of I've always wanted to see the sheep and the green grassy pastures were being herded by the dogs in Ireland. That you see all the pictures
all the
on
leprechauns.
Yeah, Ireland really does live up to the postcard reputation. So it's a great place. I loved it. So.
Okay, well, thank you kindly.
Thank you.
We wish you all the best, and we'll keep in touch. That's for sure, Michelle. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks you
Michelle.
too.
You managed to listen to the Rum Boys talk on Random Urban Memories. Just like and subscribe where you can on all platforms.